G'day, fools. Scott Phillips here from the Motley Fool. I am our Chief Investment Officer in Australia. And welcome to day 4 of Financial Literacy Week. Tell you what, if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. If you're only just joining us for the first time, that's okay too. The best part about YouTube, one of the best parts anyway, actually the best part is live chat. I'm loving this. This is just really, really fun. But the second best part is you can go back and watch the live streams recorded. So don't do it now. I've said this every day, but I'll say it again. I'll say it again tomorrow probably. Don't do it now. Let's stick with this one because I want to interact with you in live, in real time if we can. But you can go back after this and watch the first 3 days worth of videos. A very quick recap because I want to move forward. But let's start by saying this is general advice only. You know, I've said it every day this week. I'll say it again tomorrow. I need to for legal reasons, but also for ethical reasons. Please, everything I say is personal advice. If something sounds good, get it checked out, do your own research or speak to a licensed financial advisor. If it sounds terrible, easy. That's just avoid it. But either way, this is only general advice. We've got some comments already. G'day, Hal. G'day, Nick. Looking forward to the steak. I like that. Thank you very much for tuning in. So general advice only. That's the first thing. We can't give personal advice. Secondly, this week we've covered myths and mindset, right? Getting your head in the game is what we could have called that one. It's about making sure you are ready to invest, but also, most importantly, I reckon, knowing that you can do it. Now, I've talked a lot about my history and my experiences. You can do it. It is absolutely doable. I was a young schmuck that didn't know much and managed to get myself onto the investment game. I didn't have the Motley Fool in Australia to help me. I had to use the US. But anyone, if I could do it at that age, anyone could do it. Hopefully I've wisened up a little bit since then. I've also lost a little bit of hair, so maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But yes, it's been a great journey for me. I hope a great journey for you. Know that you can do it with support if you need it. Just frankly, as I said, taking away some of those myths, some of those reasons not to start, some of the things that are otherwise accepted wisdom, which aren't necessarily true. And I mentioned yesterday, that's the idea of the Motley Fool, right? Speaking truth to power, telling the truth even when it's inconvenient, and not having anyone to pander to. There are no conflicted incentives, no reason why we say anything other than what we think is true. Won't always be right, by the way. That's the other thing. We do try and acknowledge when we make mistakes, but we're trying to give it to you straight and without varnish and without conflict. And that's kind of the important thing, I reckon. So that's what we're about. On Tuesday, we went through debt and budgeting. That was the broccoli one that Nick mentioned. Wasn't it? Yes, Nick. That's one Nick mentioned. That was the each broccoli one. Just getting yourself in a position to invest, right? Getting your head right was day 1. Getting your finances right was day 2. We talked about getting rid of debt, not taking on consumer debt, doing some budgeting if that's appropriate for you, tips and tricks, ways to budget, thinking about how you might do it, how you might deal with it. Also getting rid of some debts. The avalanche method, the snowball method, we talked about both of those. We talked about ways to kind of get yourself in the right headspace and financial space and making sure you also have an emergency fund. I want everyone to start investing tomorrow. More than that, I want them to make sure their emergency fund is ready tomorrow, the rainy day fund. Have I got money if something goes wrong, if I lose my job, the car needs repairing, the roof caves in? You want to have some cash available for that stuff. So that's always priority number 1. Investing is wonderful. It's spectacularly great. Please do it. But organize your personal finances first so you are rock solid and you're building on a good foundation. That was what that was about. Yesterday, we talked about Practical Investing 101. If there are any questions on that, I might be able to get to them either today or tomorrow. So if you have any, feel free to throw them in a bit later. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. We went for everything from what is the stock market through ETFs and individual investing. Lots of content there. I speak fast anyway, but that was a big hour. Hopefully you got some value out of that one. So that's what we've done so far. Today, we're talking about superannuation and the long term. I've said before, long-term investing should be a tautology. Our co-founder, David Gardner, said if anyone hears him say long-term investing, they can give him a dead arm because he's that kind of guy. Basically, he says it should be a tautology. Investing is long-term by definition. I completely agree. So long-term and superannuation is what we'll talk about today. Tomorrow, we'll do a bit of a recap, bit of a masterclass. But actually, what I'd rather do, if we get the chance, is answer your questions. So the more questions you ask tomorrow, the less of me rambling you'll hear, and the more I can actually address the specifics of the things you want me to talk about. So I will try and do that tomorrow, but we will do a masterclass as well. We'll go through some of the content we've gone through so far this week, talk about putting it into practice, paint hopefully a picture of what the future can look like. If you've here because you are a Motley Fool member, thank you and congratulations and welcome. If you're here because you're a reader or you just got an email or you just wanted to come and improve your financial life, that's awesome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. And if you're here because someone else sent you an email and said, hey, or sent you a message, hey, listen to this knucklehead talk for an hour. My commiserations in advance, but also thank you for joining. I hope it's useful. I hope you'll come out of it, all of you, no matter which category you're in, better informed than you were when you went in. The last bit, as I said yesterday, my computer screen is down here that I'm working off. The camera feedback is there with the YouTube live on it. So over here somewhere is where my my comments are. So I can read your comments probably over there and then respond to them. So when I look off screen, I'm not looking at anybody else or any other notes. It's just that's where the screen is. So speaking of which, we've got a message. Oh man, I think I've got pop-ups on my screen. I hate it when it happens. Comes up. Simon, g'day from Townsville. Oh mate, I'd rather be in Townsville than here. Ingrid, g'day, thank you. Bill, g'day, thank you. Daft Monkey. I love that screen name. I'm not sure where that comes from. We'll see how we go. A newbie to financial lingo is any bank that gives interest account compounding interest. Nice, love it. Daft Monkey, I'll try and cover that if I get to it later today. If I don't, tomorrow, sorry to make you wait. I want to try and stick with what we told people we'd talk about, but I love that's a perfect question, mate. And I'm sorry if I haven't broken in the lingo enough. That's the other thing. If I say something you don't understand, please don't go, oh, I don't understand that financial jargon. That's, I don't know, I'll you know, over my head. Please stop me. Please ask, hey, dude, what do you mean by this thing? We've all been there. You know, this is for you, literally. If you already know the answers here and you're watching to reconfirm it, that's great. If you don't know the answer, I hope that's why you're here. I hope you want some help. If I'm not helping, please yell. So if I say something you don't understand the details of, give me a hoy and make sure we come back to it. All right. And Gordon, hey, hello from sunny SA, mate. Lovely part of the world. Do like South Australia. I've been there a few times. Right, here we go. Superannuation is unquestionably, in my opinion, the very best financial policy of the last 40 years. 40 is easy, actually, 40 years. Maybe some deregulation in the 80s. I'll go 35 years. That's easy. Introduced in 1993. It is, we have in Australia the 4th largest savings pool in the world. Now, that may or may not sound impressive. We are the 20-something largest economy in the world. We've got the 4th largest savings pool. It is extraordinary. The benefits that we are going to have in our respective retirements, because superannuation is a thing, are huge. We should be very, very, very thankful for it. It's not perfect. I'll talk about that in a second. It is absolutely not perfect. So I'm not suggesting for a second anything that's good doesn't need to be improved. It absolutely does. There's lots of ways I'd improve it. Ask me, I'll tell you. I've written about some of them, by the way, so feel free to Google my name and superannuation if you want some thoughts. But superannuation is spectacularly good. For all of its faults, for all of its drawbacks, for all the things people don't like about it, they pale into insignificance compared to the benefits that we get from super. And here's why. On, I think it was Tuesday, I did talk about nudges on Tuesday or pre-commitment devices, right? The things that you kind of do so that you don't have to make the decision in the moment. Superannuation is probably the most obvious of those in Australia right now. Why? Because I've said already, we should put aside at least 10% of our incomes for retirement. We know, because we have the data, both before super here and around the rest of the world now, people save far less as a percentage of their incomes for their retirement in almost every other jurisdiction around the world. Why? Because it's not compulsory. The nudge doesn't exist. The idea of, oh yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get around to it. I really should start soon. Yeah, good idea, but I've got this bill to pay. Oh, I'm still young. I won't do it now. You know, I'll get back to it. Not this month. Those things are, and by the way, they're all very legitimate reasons. But what they do is they suck money out of our retirement. And we've talked already about the fact that of the 3 things, remember, contributions, your return, and time. Time is the one. Sorry about that finger, actually. Time is the one you don't get to. I'll use other fingers next time. Time is the one you don't get to get back, right? We literally can't get time back. I have a podcast. We do Motley Fool Money, and I joke almost every second week that I hate our younger listeners, not because I don't like them, because they've got something I won't have, which is time on their side, right? They've got years to compound. I wish I had those back. I've done a pretty good job of compounding thus far, but I started too late, didn't put enough in, and that starting late is far more important. So really important. Hal talks about super being important. It's important for the economy today and tomorrow. Without super, the country would struggle. Right. So I've talked about why we should have a sovereign wealth fund, by the way, Hal. I've talked about why it's great for the individual. It's great for the country because it removes pressure on the pension system. Now, as I said, I would change some things. I actually think, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you to use superannuation as tax breaks. I'm absolutely going to tell you to do that today. And out of the same or the other corner of my mouth, I'm going to say they're too generous. Now, I think that's absolutely true. I'm not kidding for a second. I would change them if it was up to me. I know that sounds like a horrible thing for a financial advisor to say. I care about the country more than I care about my money. So I know, again, not a strange thing to say. People don't say that anymore. I think they're too generous. But while they are, take advantage of them. I'm someone who says, you know what, I would change tax deductions, for example, but I never, ever criticize anyone for taking advantage of those deductions because the government is saying to you, you may deduct these things from your tax, so do it. I'm not saying pay more tax than you need to. I would change the rules, but that's a thing for a different day. But yes, really, really great for the Fed. going to take a heap of pressure off retirement savings, heap of pressure off pensions. It's just a brilliant tool. So that, I hope, is a pretty good ad for the system, right? Or at least for the concept. Again, the system needs fixing, but as a concept, it is just wonderfully great. Lots of people complain about having to pay super during working life, by the way. I get people on Twitter all the time saying, oh, I shouldn't be compulsory. I shouldn't have to commit to it. I'm yet to find a person in retirement who says, I wish we didn't have super. I wish I hadn't been forced to save that money. I hate my life now. And so sometimes that's a bit of perspective, right? A bit of a, right now, could I use the extra 10%? Yeah, absolutely. In X years' time, I won't say how many, when I'm retired, will I be glad I put that money aside? You bet. So, I think it's important to have a bit of perspective, a bit of context, a bit of forward thinking. We're talking about being long-term, right? That's the great thing about this group here. Investors get it. Non-investors tend not to get super as much because they just kind of don't really understand the value of compounding. That's what we've been talking about for the past few days. So a really great system. I'll just check my questions. We're all good. Friday. Nice, Gordon. Thank you. I'm actually going to throw it in on Friday, Matt, but I'll try and remember to talk about ESG. And kind of Tesla on Elon Musk. Wow, that's a big conversation. Might need some longer time on Friday. So super is wonderful. So please, I've tried to give it a big up because I really want you to understand. Firstly, it's really important. Secondly, the tax breaks are excellent, and it's really worth you taking advantage of super when and where you get the chance. So let's talk about it. Superannuation is a compulsory contribution of a proportion of your wage or salary. It doesn't apply to individual business owners. Probably should in some form. I don't know how I'd do it, but it probably should because those people deserve it. And also on the flip side, we should have them save for their own retirements. But if you're earning a salary or a wage, your employer is putting money aside on your behalf out of your pay packet for your retirement. And that is a really great system. The amount at the moment, 11.5%, hopefully going to 12 in time. That's probably the end result. That's probably as much as we need. Here's the thing, by the way. Don't believe the articles that people write about, oh, there's only this much in super right now, so it's a failure. You know why there's only so much in super right now? Because it only started 32 years ago. And it started at 3%. If you've just retired, actually no, that people talk about superannuation balances in retirement. Let's say you're 85. You've been 20 years retired. You only had 10 years of super. And it was only contributed at 3, 4, or 5%. Well, actually went from 3 to 6, but on average about 3 or 5%. At that cost, your super balance is going to be low. You didn't have much to compound. You didn't have long to compound it, and you've probably used some of it already. So, of course, late in retirement, you haven't got much super left. Even at retirement, let's say you're 67 today and you're retiring. You've had 32 years of contributions. That's pretty good. Was it 3/4 of your working life, maybe? That's great. But again, it started at 3, and then went to 6, and then eventually got to 9, and then we're still not at 12. It was designed to be at 12% a decade ago or more, I think. So it just hasn't been at the same level. Now, compared to someone who joins the workforce today, let's call it 21, let's say they went to uni, they're going to have 46 years of compounding at 11.5% and 12% of their wage. The maths on that, I hope you instinctively get it. The gap on that is massive. And so, yes, superannuation balances in retirement are low right now. They will grow over time. We've also done things like fixed, finally, women who are taking time out of the workforce to have kids, to have superannuation contributions made on their maternity and blokes on their paternity leave. Really important. Why? Because it's early in life. Have a kid at 28. You've got 39 years for that to compound, right? Have a kid at 35. You've still got 32 years for that to compound. Having those contributions made at that point in life, the early contribution compounds really massively. You can't catch up. The 25-year-old who starts investing now or adding the super now versus the 55-year-old who tries to add 2 or 3 or 4 times as much at 55, the 25-year-old is going to win every time. Even though the contributions are lower, compounding does that thing where time takes over from you and creates a massive amount of value. Great question about contributions to investing outside super. My screen's frozen on YouTube. I hope it's still broadcasting. I hope it is. Let's find out. I'll keep talking and someone tells me if it's not working. I will grab my phone just in case someone from the office needs to tell me this isn't working, guys. Looks like it's back on YouTube. So again, apologies for that. If you're just seeing me coming back from a stall, then you haven't missed too much because I just tried to work out whether we were frozen. I'm going to use my phone to make sure I'm in contact with the office if someone needs to tell me it's all gone pear-shaped. So I'm going to look at that one for a sec. Okay. What I was saying was time is all of the essence. Contributions made early, contributions that compound for decades work. Loud and clear. Oh, good. Thank you, guys. It was I had the little wheel of death on my screen, so I'm glad. Thank you for letting me know. That's the great thing about YouTube Live. Thank you very much. Thanks, Hal. Thanks, Gordon. Really appreciate it. Okay, well, I won't repeat what I've just said. You want to be able to contribute early and long. Make sure you make full use of your superannuation contributions. So Here's why. Now, by the way, I talk about the 11.5 and 12%. Not only that, it's actually taxed at 15%. So the contributions are tax effective on the way in, which is brilliant, right? So you're whatever marginal tax rate you're paying, if you're paying 30, 42, 47, maybe 35 and 47 now, and you haven't caught up with the new tax brackets, you are getting a rather than receiving it yourself and investing it yourself, you're investing at a better rate, because I'm investing my after-tax money, right? If I'm investing using super, it's tax effective on the way in. So you're getting more bang for your buck just by having it contributed. That's easy. Speaking of that, so the tax is on concessional contributions, money you add to super. So $1 I invest myself versus $1 I invest out of my concessional contributions. In other words, the more lightly taxed contributions I'm making, you're getting a benefit even before you get your investment returns. You're making more money by investing inside super than investing in your own name, called concessional contributions. Now, there is a cap up to which you can contribute. That cap tends to rise over time, so keep that in mind. But if you can, if you're prepared to, do think about trying to maximize those super contributions. We got a question yesterday about investing inside and outside super. I will talk about that now, I think. Yeah, let's do that now. So the benefit of super is it's hugely tax effective. I'll come back to, actually, I'm going to come back to that. Sorry, I'm changing horses midstream here. Let's talk about the whole life cycle of super, and I'll come back to then the individual versus super. So concessional tax on the way in. During the contribution phase, in other words, during the time when you're still working and adding to super, your super's over there compounding away, the proceeds are taxed at only 15%. The earnings are taxed more generously. The capital gains tax has a 33% discount. It's not the 50% discount you get personally, but a 33% discount when you are making those gains during the contributions phase, the accumulation phase, they call it, while you're adding to your super before you retire and start to draw it down. Again, it's much, much, much more tax effective than doing it in your own name. So again, money for jam, right? You get the returns, you get the compounding, all the benefits. If you invest in your own name, it's still stupidly worthwhile. Investing in your own name, have it stupidly worthwhile, and then getting a tax benefit, it's pretty good. When you retire, now, by the way, regulations can always change. So this is not a promise or a guarantee of what will happen in future, but it's what's happening now. When you retire, the first 1.9 million, I think it is now, $1 million, if you move that from your accumulation phase, I'm sorry about the jargon, to a pension account, just you literally tick a box and move from one to the other, that is, the earnings of that are tax-free. Now, I think that's way too generous. Again, as I've said before, why? Let's say I earn a 10% return on that $1.9 million. $190,000 per year tax-free is, compared to, think about what you're earning now, what you're paying now as a wage earner. 190 grand a year tax-free feels a bit generous. When I retire and I get that sort of return, if I was going to get 190 grand a year and pay no tax versus the fiery or the copper or the nurse or the factory worker who's paying 20, 30, 40% tax, I don't know, it doesn't feel particularly fair. But it's there, it's a rule, it's in place, you might as well take advantage of it. So again, concessional contribution tax, concessional tax when you're earning money, and tax-free up to $1.9 million in retirement. Above that, only taxed at 15% to $3 million. And then depending on what happens with the legislation, the Treasurer's trying to get it through. It's literally work in progress right now. Maybe over $3 million will be taxed at 30%. Even still, over $3 million at 30%, if you're on a higher tax bracket, you're still better off with money in super. So you can see right through your life, in almost all circumstances, tax effective. Now, I want to say, super is also stupidly complex. I mentioned the system should be improved. What I've just given you is a very, very broad rundown. There are so many different component parts of this. How much you're earning, what are the tax breaks you might be able to get as an individual. If you're not paying any tax at all, putting money in super is going to be worse than leaving it outside super. Transition to retirement, pensions, you can start accessing your super earlier before you retire. So I mentioned the retirement age of 67. You can start getting it at 60. You can get it earlier under certain circumstances. The whole lot is a dog's breakfast. So I joke regularly, I want to be treasurer only for 6 months. Why 6 months? Because it's long enough. And after 6 months, everyone's going to try and kill me. But there are so many changes we should make to simplify things. You shouldn't need a financial advisor to work out whether superannuation is a good idea or how to use superannuation. It shouldn't be that hard. Governments, for frankly political reasons and some financial reasons, have made it stupidly complex, try and buy votes and stuff. I say governments plural. It's not about this government or past individual governments. It's governments in general. They just keep messing with it. It's stupidly complex, but it's stupidly worthwhile. So The ATO's website's got some great information. If you can make head or tail of it, great. It's not super complex. But if you want to get some financial advice, go and see a financial advisor. Ask them what you should do with your personal circumstances, because it does depend on who you are, what family circumstances, what retirement circumstances, how much you've contributed, all that sort of stuff. It's messy. Generally speaking, for the vast, vast bulk of people, again, this is general advice only, putting money in super is really, really smart. Now, this is where we go back all the way to the original question of personal versus super. Had the question yesterday, I think it was, about that. I'll try to cover it now. I had a question already about it. What you gain in superannuation is tax effectiveness. And the compound value of that is huge, right? You think about paying 15%, or maybe you're on a 30% tax bracket just for fun. The difference there is 15 percentage point. That's really good. It feels better. It is better. But like compounding I talked about the other day with Warren Buffett, a little bit more compounded for a very long period of time ends up being a hell of a lot more. So don't just think I'm saving, I'm getting 15% better off. That compound difference over time is extraordinary. Just hit my drink. Simon says you've lost me. Okay. Am I back? I think I'm back. I still think I'm talking. Am I back, team? I'll wait just in case rather than talking. Must be my internet connection today. Back. Excellent. Thanks, Simon. I don't know how much you missed. I'll go back half a step. Okay, personal or super, I'll be really quick. If you've already heard this, I'm repeating myself, then see if I get it right. Super is super tax effective, no pun intended. Great returns over time. Not only are you saving on tax in the current year, but because you're paying less tax, you've got more money left over to compound. And that literally, the line goes up faster and harder. And you end up with not just 15% better off, you end up with multiples of your money, almost certainly over a long enough period of time. So super is always, 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 always more tax effective. You're almost always going to have more money left over at the end of the day. Why wouldn't you? Two reasons. One, you have no flexibility. If I happen to decide at 55, I'm jacking my job, hopefully I won't, it's not that far away, then I'm going to say, right, I'm out. And I'm going to say, I'd like my super, please. And the government's going to say, no, you can't have it yet. But I've stopped working and I've got money in super and I'd like to have it out to fund my living expenses, please. No, you can't have it. So that, if you want the optionality, the flexibility, later in life as you get towards retirement, but you're not there yet, of having access to money, having some of the money outside super and some inside gives you flexibility and choice. That's really useful and really important. The only other reason really is flexibility of investment. And these days with self-managed super funds, you can pretty much do that yourself anyway, using an SMSF rather than a structured APRA super fund. So the flexibility thing doesn't really matter. If you're someone who says, like, I can't run an SMSF, I don't want to, but I want flexibility of investing, then maybe you might say, I'll leave some money outside super to do the thing I want to do, invest in what I want to invest in myself. And that might make some sense. I don't think there's a huge difference. I think there's a huge reason to do it because of the flexibility available in self-managed super funds. Even in some industry funds, for example, you can pick ASX shares, the top 300 plus ETFs. You can be pretty flexible, you do your own thing pretty much. But they're the only two reasons, not the only, they are two significant reasons, the real reasons why you might not put everything you can in super. For me personally, I'll tell you what I've done. I've maximized my super, and when I have extra money left over, I've invested it personally. I have also not maximized super every year, I've invested personally. That is that's an tax ineffective way of investing. Why have I done it? For the optionality and the flexibility I talked about before. If I want to lump sum at some point, if I want to stop working, or I just want to say, hey, you know what, I want to buy a new car. I've got enough money. I'm going to buy a new car. I said the other day, don't buy a new car. So this is a hypothetical. But if I wanted to, at 58, and I wanted the lump sum, I can do it because I've got some money outside super. It is costing me money. I'm making a lower return than I would if I'd done inside super. Really, really clearly. Let's be really clear. That is a bad financial decision. For me, it's a good life decision. And I've said a little bit, but I'll say regularly, hopefully the next couple of days, finances are made for your life, not vice versa. I say the economy is there to serve society in the same way your money is there to serve your life, not vice versa, right? He who dies with the most toys still dies. So there are some conditions or some situations where you say, this is the best financial decision, purely financially. But my lifestyle concerns, my issues, my optionality, my desires, maybe don't match that. That's okay. I said, if you want to buy the new car, buy the new car. Recognize the financial implications of it, by the way. Don't do it if it's going to hurt your retirement. But at some point, if you get to a point of like, hey, I've got enough, I want to enjoy my life, I'm the last person who's going to say don't do it. So reasons to invest inside super are tax and tax and tax. Outside super, flexibility of both investment style and choice, and when you access the money. Right, let's move on from that. Thank you for everyone saying I had a quick pause. I hope it's not my internet. It might be, I think. My apologies. Okay. The next point I've got in here is to start why starting early is critical. I think I've done that to death. But I will just reiterate the point very, very quickly. There's a great analysis. It's basically that if you started at 30 and put a certain amount of money aside for 10 years and then stopped, dead. That's person one. Person two starts at 40, so the end of that 10 years, and puts money aside every year from there on until retirement. The person who started early, even though they contribute less than half of the time, much less than half the time, almost a third of the time, ends up with more money in an average market return scenario. Now, it does depend on what rate of return you get. So this is not a universally true thing. The rate of return depends, right? If you get 0%, then obviously you're saving the money for longer. It's going to give you more money. But if you get an average market return, starting early, investing as much as you can, even if you then stop, it might be because you have kids. It might be because you want to pay down the mortgage. It might just because life happens. I hope you don't stop, by the way. I hope you keep going. But the point is, if you started early and did only for 10 years and then stopped dead, someone started when you stopped and invested for the next 27 years of their life. My hands go off the screen here. That's how big it is. That's the impact, right? So please start early, and no more than anything, super more than anything, because you get the extra tax benefit. So the question we got earlier from was that super? Who asked that? Thoughts on young people, Nick, under 35 doing concessional contributions instead of investing outside super? I think I've answered that question pretty directly, Nick. Financially, easy decision. Lifestyle, decide how much flexibility you want versus how much maximization you want. If you have genuine hardship, you can actually get your super early. I'm a guy who likes options. So not options in trading options, but options in choices in life. I would have some outside super, but most inside super. It was me. I can't tell what you should do, and I can't tell young people what they should do. I think, if you're 35 and healthy, or under 35 and healthy, very, very good chance you get to retirement in really good shape. And again, no guarantees, but I reckon you're going to be better off having more money inside super than out for the returns you're going to get. Just makes it more likely you're going to have a comfortable retirement. But at the point at which you realize you're going to have to have a comfortable retirement, then choose outside that. But in super's about retirement, so do that first is my suggestion. Ingrid, hopefully I've answered that question as well. Well, you do ask about mortgages and offsets. This is hard, right? Because mortgages are bloody expensive right now. Houses are bloody expensive right now. My general view is that if you can, okay, problem with offsets. Everyone thinks an offset is great until they redraw the money and use it for something else. And it goes from being a great way to reduce your repayments to a source of cash next time you want to replace the car, go on a holiday, put new carpet in the house, buy a new lounge. If you could genuinely, honestly say to yourself, I will not maybe not you, but anyone watching that in that situation, I know myself well enough to know I will never, ever touch that. Now, if that's the case, pay it off the mortgage, don't leave it in the offset. The offset is the bank's way of saying, hey, maybe you might take it out later if you wanted to. You'd be okay with us, and you'll pay more interest on the money because you take it back out again. So offsets are great in theory. In practice, they tend to actually end up adding people's debt rather than reducing it. Not adding to it, but not reducing it at all. Just it's fake saving because then you go and spend the money, right? But if you can use it safely, an offset is a really good idea. If you can't, just pay down on the mortgage. If you want to get ahead, my general view on this is get ahead a bit, either with an offset or with extra repayments. Once you get to that point, and again, I can't promise you what the future is going to be like. I struggle to see a scenario where house prices increase faster than shares over the next 40 years. Now, if that's true, your dollar is going to be compounding faster in shares than in property. And if that's true, then you want to maximize your returns. Investing the extra in shares makes sense to me. That's my view. Everyone's different. Have something in the offset or have something on extra repayments made so you've given yourself some buffer. Because if you do lose your job, something goes wrong. We talked about the emergency fund. Being ahead on your mortgage is a quasi-emergency fund. Not in whole, but in part. It takes care of the mortgage bit. So just have a think about that if that makes sense for your circumstances. Anyone else watching in the same situation, I would put a little bit on the mortgage to get ahead. Then I expect the returns from shares are going to be better. Don't forget those franking credits we spoke about yesterday. So I would personally get a bit ahead on the mortgage, then invest in super. That way you get the best of both worlds. You're still paying the mortgage down and you're getting ahead in your finances as well. The other view is pay your mortgage as fast as you can and then start investing. Two problems with that. Firstly, you're starting investing late, so you're not getting the full value of that compounding. Remember, your house price is set. It compounds up. The debt doesn't compound. So your debt is set, your savings then compound. So your savings are racing ahead of the debt over time. The other thing is everyone says, when I pay the mortgage off, then I'll start saving and investing. Some people absolutely do. Maybe even many people. Most people, I don't know. You find a reason to spend the money. Life's got more expensive. The kids are at private school. I bought a new car. I want to take a holiday. All those things happen, and you find all of a sudden you're not investing that money. If you have invested early, like I just mentioned with the 30-year-old, you get ahead of that and you're ahead for good as long as you don't touch that money. So I would absolutely want people to build their nest egg as quickly as they can, as early as they can. Even if you then stop and let that compound, you're far better than trying to chase your tail later in life. So I hope that makes sense. Dave says, super is good to max out the 30K per year for tax reasons and invest any outside super for liquidity purposes. Yeah, pretty much. Not everyone can save 30 grand a year, by the way. It's a pretty high bar for a whole lot of people. If you're on a good wicket, then you can. I'm not. Everyone's got to make their own decisions. I'm not sure if I could contribute less than 30 grand in total to my investment, to my future investments a year, I would probably put a little bit of that in my own name and most of it in super. Again, I'm not saying we should do or anyone should do. I can't give advice, personal advice. That's what I would probably do. If you do max out my super, then yeah, well, I mean, you can't do more than that anyway. So then any money left over should be invested for sure. That's a great way to do it and a great way to think about it. So yeah, it's the flexibility. And Nick, as you say, it's all about balance. Unfortunately, yes. That I think I've mentioned before, I alluded to it anyway, but I'll say pretty clearly, there is nothing new in finance or investing in the last 100 years, or maybe I'll say 70 years, 80 years. Ben Graham, Warren Buffett's mentor, codified investing effectively for us in about 1920 something or 30 something. Thereafter, there's different applications of the rules, but the basics are the same. So when people like me sit and tell you this stuff, I haven't had some sort of magical Sermon on the Mount epiphany where I've heard the word of God, the finance God, and told you all these wonderful new things. I'm trying to break down sensible finance and hopefully communicate it in a way that helps you adopt it and take it on board. Yeah, super's new, but the idea of retiring for the future is not new. Same with balance. Diversification is as old as the hill. Same. This is really another version of diversification, right? Question about premixed options within super. Oh, that's a really good question. I wonder what I've got on here. I don't. Can you come make sure you haven't given me a name? You're an anonymous egg. What to do about premixed super and how much you need in super for a reasonable retirement? I will get to at least one of those. Actually, I'll do that now. How much you need in super for retirement depends entirely on a few things. Again, sorry, it depends. Do you own your house is the big one. If you're paying rent, you need a lot more in super than if you don't. The age pension is predicated, even these days, on people owning their own homes. It's a massive problem with the super system. You get the same amount no matter what, or at least roughly the same amount. You get rent assistance under certain circumstances. But broadly, the superannuation, the pension is set at a level that provides you enough money to live if you own your own home. If you don't, you're in more trouble than Superman. So try and own your own home by the time you retire. Obvious advice, hard to do these days, particularly for kids. I say kids, I'm talking about young people in general. I'm old, so a kid is anyone about 40 these days, or at least 30. So yes, just do that if you can. In terms of how much you need in super, again, depends. If you own your own home, you need a lot less than if you don't. The numbers range by most conservative, reasonable estimates between $600 and about $800,000 for a comfortable retirement, assuming you're owning your own home. Why? It comes down to how much you can reasonably withdraw. Because here's the thing: if I give you 600 grand and you didn't invest it, and you want to take out 30 grand a year, you better hope you don't live more than 20 years, right? That's just because it drifts away. The good news is you don't have, or you shouldn't have it all, in my opinion, have it all in cash on retirement age. Why? Because you're going to be retired for a very long time. In some cases, people are going to be retired for almost as long as they worked. Hopefully more in some cases, but at least as long as they worked. And what that means is you want your super to keep growing, or at least the investment returns to grow as you suck money out. What does that mean? Let's say you earn, I'll make it easy for myself, you earn 5%, you take out 10% a year of your balance. That means the net amount you're taking is only 5%. In other words, the drawdown is twice as long in terms of years, because you're not taking out the full 10%. You're taking out 10, but you're replenishing with 5 that the investments are earning. Now, in a perfect world, you're going to be earning as much as you're taking out, in which case your balance stays steady and you're at least covering those withdrawals as you go. So let's do the maths on that. The average balance super, and there was a question about the mix. I'll talk about mix in a second. The average balance super is going to be about 6% a year. Now, I think that's too low, not because it's wrong, because balance has a whole lot of property and cash and bonds and fixed interest and other stuff. Most people in growth phase shouldn't have too much in those assets, in my view. Why? Those assets make things less volatile. The ups go up less, the downs go down less. It's less scary. If you need less scary in your life, do it. If you want to maximize your long-term returns, you want to trade some volatility for some better long-term returns. So shares over time. We had a 38% fall. I mentioned this a dozen times in 2020 when COVID hit. And yet over time, the share market's given us 9% a year. So do you want 9% or 6%? I'd rather 9. If I said to you to get 9%, you need to have a bad year every 3 years, would you accept it? Not a rhetorical question, a real question. If you're someone who can say, I can stomach that stuff, I don't like it, I don't want to like it, I'm going to hate it, I'm going to wish I had never done it, but I'm going to be glad I did. That's the same thing, by the way. But because I want the higher returns, then go for it. You should be able to get those higher returns. So let's wind that back. If you have a $600,000 superannuation balance, and you can earn 9% a year, and you want to take out 50 grand a year, guess what? You just covered your withdrawals. Now, if you want to take 100 grand out a year, the maths ends up being the maths, by the way, right? So generally speaking, in Australia with franking credits, again, we've talked about those before, a whole different topic, but we've talked about it before. If you can earn, if you want to, okay, in a perfect world, you want to be able to fund whatever your retirement income is or what you desire with a 5% drawdown from your super. Why? 2 reasons. If the balance grows over time, it allows for the fact that you want to have a better standard of living over time. That's a positive, right? In a perfect world, right? This is what you would aim for if you could. And then you want to take out 5%, because that's a pretty reasonable amount. It lets your balance grow because you're getting 9% a year, roughly. So you're getting your growing balance and you're taking out 5%. Now, let's do the maths on that. If you want to live on 50 grand a year and you only want to take out 5%, you have to have $1 million superannuation balance. Most people watching here over a certain age won't have anything like that now. Hopefully, as you get towards retirement, it gets closer as your money compounds, as you're adding more money to it, by the way, as you're working. And so I'm not saying if you don't have $1 million, you're terrible. If you have 600 grand, you're terribly off. The great thing about the Australian system is under a certain amount of super, you get the pension, either a part or a full pension. So the safety net is pretty good. It's not great. There's a lot of pensioners living in poverty, by the way, so I'm not for a second saying it's enough. But how much do you need? Depends on your living standards and your ability to qualify for a pension. Generally speaking, 600 grand is accepted to be the minimum, ideally in retirement. Again, think about how much you want to withdraw from that, how much you can afford to withdraw. At a very basic level, I mentioned the 5%. You could take, if you're getting 10% a year and super, and you shouldn't assume it, but let's say 9%, you could take 50 grand out of a $600,000 portfolio rather than having to have $1 million. So again, I'm sorry, it depends. And the other thing, by the way, is it's an academic question to some degree. If you're saying, hey, I've got so much in super, I'm not willing to know when to stop saving, that's a great problem to have. If you've got too little, it doesn't really matter what number I give you, as much as you can possibly save between now and retirement is the only answer that makes sense. So I know I don't mean to duck the question. It's a really good one, but it's probably, if you've got enough, you probably know you've got enough. If you haven't got enough, you probably know you haven't got enough. The actual amount is kind of just the result. So it matters, and if it's a target for you to work towards, then great, use that as a motivator. But I think most people probably know. But yeah, 600 to 800 is probably about the sweet spot you're looking for. Yes, we'll talk about high growth options in a sec. All right. So I've done that. We've done what happens if you don't have enough. Let's go back to the investment options in super. I've kind of alluded to this already. The finance industry is some parts unrealistic, some parts just too conservative. So you'll hear academics talk a lot about the best thing for super. And I'm going to be arrogant enough to say, I will say I know better. I don't think I know better. I think I know more realistically. Can I put it that way? What happens in the equations, assume a great 2-word Latin phrase, the only Latin I've ever learned in my life. I was taught by Mr. Barnett, my year 9 economics teacher, ceteris paribus. It's Latin for all else being equal. And the math says, hey, if nothing else changes, this equation holds true. And then you say, cool, what if something else changes? And they say, well, you can't use the equation then. So what's the point of it? Well, in reality, what's the point of it? Those equations are fantastic teaching tools because they explain the concepts of investing, concept of economics, right? How does the economy work? Broadly speaking, the flows look like this. Broadly speaking, the interactions in the economy look like this. They're really useful teaching tools. When you take them to the real world, what I think plenty of academics get it right, by the way, because they understand it's a messy, muddy world. But what the other ones miss is it's not applicable in the actual real world. Why do I say these things? So firstly, you will see words like aggressive, balanced, conservative. Now, Think about your money. Who wants to be aggressive with their money? That feels kind of reckless, right? Why would you be aggressive? Now, some people are saying, I love being aggressive. That's a personality trait. Most people are taught to say, well, that seems reckless and silly. Then you got balanced and conservative. Well, balance feels good, but conservative feels better because I'm not taking any silly risks, right? So I'm being conservative on my money. It's superannuation for retirement. I should be conservative. That's a good thing. That is all true in theory. And the labels aren't even, no one's trying to mess you up by applying those labels. They are accepted finance labels for accepted ranges of risk you're taking. I mentioned academics. One of the big miscontributions or poor contributions, unuseful contributions they've made is the academic will tell you risk is the same as volatility. In other words, the more something goes up and down, the riskier it is. The less it goes up and down, the less risky it is. Okay. Cash doesn't go up or down, right? So it's perfectly unrisky. Except if you're getting 1% in a savings account, you're not taking any downside risk, but you're not exactly making enough money to pay your bills. Let's take another company, a business that's doubled its share price in 5 years, right? Not overly aggressive, but pretty good. And it's been super, super volatile. Up, down, up, down, up, down. It's been a really hair-raising ride. The academics say that's a riskier thing than owning cash. So in the event, doubling your money was riskier than getting 1% a year. I hope that's clear that those are not real-world definitions. Risk, as Warren Buffett says, is the permanent loss of capital, or the chance of a permanent loss of capital. I want you to think about that because this is a long run up, guys, but hopefully it helps because when we start to then think about what is a premixed option in super, we all think we should be balanced or conservative, right? Because we feel like we're being safe and doing the reasonable thing. If you have 47 years, if you're 20, and you have 47 years to compound before retirement, and by the way, remember, you're not dying on retirement day, you're living another 30 years. If you're 20 today, you're probably living another 30 years. So you've got a 70-year horizon, and someone's saying, be conservative with your money. Be balanced, don't be aggressive. I hope that's clear that if the market does gain 9% a year on average over extended periods of time, if we're lucky enough that it does have the next 70 years, being conservative and getting 3% or being aggressive and getting 9%, I don't know. It seems pretty clear to me. Same with balance. Balance might give you 6%. I mentioned the 6% annual return. Why? Some shares, some international shares, great. Some property, okay. Some cash and fixed interest and bonds. Why does a 20-year-old need to be invested in bonds? So as you think about pre-mixed options, and again, the other thing is, by the way, that the finance industry is kind of, particularly financial advisors, they kind of feel compelled not to have you take too much risk. Why? It's probably bad for you if you get it wrong. It's probably bad for them if they get it wrong because then it looks like it's their fault, right? They've led you into something that's not right for you. They get you all these risk profile things. They're good, by the way. They're real. I absolutely get it. I'm not saying what you should. If you're someone who just needs to sleep at night, and if you'd freak out and have a terrible life if your returns were volatile, then go to cash. You'll get a terrible return, but you'll sleep, and that's okay. If you're someone who just kind of likes a little bit, can sound a little bit volatile, not too much because you get too scared, then go balanced. I'll tell a story about my mum. She won't mind me saying this. Very, very, like early on, we lost Dad 20-something years ago. Very early on after that, she had the superannuation that was his that got rolled over to hers. So we got the superannuation fund. And Mum got the statement out when I was at home one day back at Mum and Dad's house and looked at the statement and said, oh, my super's gone down. It's not supposed to do that, is it? Now, over time, it's not supposed to do that, but it was a bad year for the share market. So the money went down. And I had to reassure her that it would be okay, that in time it would go back up, or I thought it would. And a bad year is a bad year. Now, without that advice and support, would she be in something different? I don't know. That's a question for her and a financial advisor. If that's you, if you can't cope with down, then be conservative by all means. For anyone who wants to maximize their returns over decades of working and then another decade, 3 decades, hopefully, of retirement, aggressive is not aggressive. It's more volatile, yes. It's not, generally speaking, more risky as long as you invest it sensibly. Not every aggressive strategy is a good one. If I said aggressively invest in, I don't know, houses on the moon, probably a bad idea. But if you're being sensibly, I'm not going to use the word aggressive. If you are embracing the power of capitalism for decades, realizing it's going to be volatile, but hoping that the long term is really, really good, and particularly if you've got a long term before retirement or a long time before you need the cash, because again, remember, in retirement, you're going to keep compounding at the same time as you're drawing down. You want to be building those returns. So it's not for everybody. Do what's right for you. But for me, I will tell you, we got a self-managed super fund. We invest in individual shares and ETFs. Some of my wife's super is still in some of her employer's super funds, needs to be rolled over. In the meantime, we put them in high growth. High growth, by the way, you'll see instead of aggressive, it is better than that. Even better than that for me, again, would be investing in telling the super fund. You can do it through the member choice options. Almost all super funds have them now. You can choose to invest in Australian and international shares. If it was me, I'd probably put my wife's super into half international shares and half Australian shares and be done with it. She did a long time to retirement. She's going to be a long time retired. Good genes in the family. Hopefully she'll live for decades. The compounding value of that will well and truly pay for itself. So let me wind this all the way back. Conservative, balanced, or aggressive. Or conservative, balanced, high growth. Depends on what you see. In my opinion, the longer you have until you need the capital, not even the proceeds, the capital, the cash, the more you should take those higher growth options, probably shares, mix them between Australian and international, be diversified as always. That's the approach I would take to that sort of stuff. Okay, what have we got? More questions. How much we need? Done that. Australian super. Hal, investment bonds. Should we do investment bonds now or should I do it on Friday? Come back to me, Hal. Come back to me. The problem with direct options, says our anonymous questioner, super funds mandate a percentage remains in cash. I don't know about the individual funds. I am not aware of that. Yeah, I don't know. Some of them do say you have to have a minimum of 20% in pre-mixed options, not individual direct shares. If you buy ETFs, that may not matter. Check with your individual fund, make the decision that's right for you. It depends on the fund. I'd have to check. Yeah, thanks, Hal. I'll try and get back to it, mate, in the last 5 minutes if I've got the time. Some quick superannuation tips and tricks. I want this to be actionable. We said this all week. Firstly, I mentioned my wife's super funds. We are literally in the middle of consolidating her funds together. One's not being used anymore. She doesn't have pay from that employer. The other one, we have a self-managed fund. We should roll that one across. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to tell you, the plumber never always has a leaky tap, right? I need to do that with my family. You need to do that for you. If you have more than one fund, you are almost certainly paying too much in fees. You don't need more than one fund. Consolidate them together, save yourself some fees. It's stupidly easy. Go to the website of the superannuation fund you want to keep. Tell them you've got another fund and get them to roll that over. You'll need a couple of bits of details from your last superannuation statement. They're easy to find. Grab the statement, go online, call the fund if you need to. Get the details you need. Instruct the ongoing fund to tell the other fund to give them the money. It happens really easily. Can take a little bit of time. It doesn't really matter. It'll happen in time and it's done. You'll save yourself some fees. Always, always, always a smart idea. Secondly, we've talked about investment options. Check the investment option you're invested in. Make sure it suits your goals and your temperament. I can't tell you what you should do other than what I've said, which is if it was me, I would be in high growth. Now, that still involves some lower growth options, so be careful. But at least that better than balance. Balance is better than conservative. If you've got enough time to retirement, if you've got the right temperament to do it. So high growth. Or preferably for me, we talked about ETFs yesterday, so I hope this is a nice roll on. I would invest in 100% shares. It'll be a mix of Australia and US or international. Choose your mix. 50-50 is not bad. If you want to be, feel a bit better about investing more at home, 70-30 is really good too. Yeah, that's what I would do if it was me and I had a super fund. If you want to do a self-managed super fund, you've got a whole lot of options. We're not going to cover SMSFs today. You've got a whole lot of other options to go with for an SMSF if you want to. But inside super, pivot as far as you can, feel comfortable towards growth, as long as you have a long time left. And remember, at retirement, this is a really, really key one, guys. People say, I'm 62, I'm getting near retirement. I should wind back my the aggressiveness of my investing strategy. Here's when it doesn't matter. If you have a large enough balance that you're going to live off the income, then you don't need to go back to anything else because the capital's staying employed. You're just going to hive off the proceeds, right? You're kind of skimming off the money that flows out from it. That's the perfect scenario. In that case, why do you need to go change your style as you get closer to retirement? You don't need the capital. You're living off the income. If you need the capital on retirement day, if on 67th birthday, you're like, I need to take the super out to pay off the mortgage or fix the house or whatever it is, then yes, be more conservative because you don't want the money to drop away just before you take it out. So the closer you get to needing the capital, not the returns, but the capital, the money that's in there, the more conservative your style should be. If you can retire at 67 and live to 97 and hope that you're going to not ever run down your super, then there's no reason to reduce your volatility just for the sake of it. But again, you decide what's right for you. That's just a general approach. So think about the capital, not the proceeds. We have a service at Motley Fool. I'm not going to plug it for the sake of it. It's called Everlasting Income. The idea of that service is we actually invest in shares. Now, we don't do it on behalf of our members. They do it themselves. We just give a model portfolio. But we do that. We say, here's what we think you should buy. These are the shares. They're going to spit out this much dividend income, and you should live off the dividends if you can. That's the way the service is structured. A lot of our members follow it that way. If that's right for them, why have a lower return if you live off the proceeds? You want a high return, right? So do that. Okay, insurances. Insurance is really, 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 really important. But also, a lot of superannuation includes insurance you may not need or want. And you're paying a premium every year for that insurance. I'll get back to the growth income, your retirement. I'll get to cash. Peter, oh, gee, I'll try. Running out of time. So insurances. Please, please, please be appropriately insured. Have car insurance, have health insurance if it's appropriate for you. Definitely have home and contents insurance, or just contents if you're renting. Have income protection and life insurance if you have people depending on you. If I fall off the tree tomorrow, I have life insurance, my family will be okay. If I can't work tomorrow because I have some horrific injury, no one wants to think about it, but if I do, 75% of my income is covered. My family will be okay. If you have dependents, please do the right thing by them. Again, you do you, but I'd hate to think anyone watching had a, again, no one wants to think about having an accident, right? But even worse than that is having an accident and then not being able to pay the bills, or your family not being able to pay the bills. You don't want that. Please have appropriate insurance. As and when you no longer need it, feel free to take it away. No point having life insurance if you're 25 and you've got no dependents, no partner, no kid. What are you paying for life insurance for? When you're 35, you've got 2 kids, you absolutely should, in my opinion, have life insurance. But if you don't, so check your insurances. Don't pay premiums you don't need for policies you don't need. That's a simple one, really easy to check. Equally, you may have insurance outside super. Don't have insurance inside and outside super unless you want them together. Cancel one or the other based on what makes more sense. Often inside super, you get pretty good rates because the superannuation funds negotiate better prices with the insurer, but not always. So check what your cover is, check what your premiums are, make that decision, but don't pay twice and don't pay for things you don't need. They're simply eating away at your retirement savings. So please be careful with that. We're talking about voluntary contributions. I'm going to bang that drum one more time and get to our questions, which we've got a couple of minutes for. Actually, not bad. We'll do pretty well. Yeah, please make voluntary contributions if it's right for you. If you can save the extra money, many people can't. If you can, please do. Your future self will thank you, I promise you. If you want to do it outside super because you want to have that flexibility, things like, for example, if you are, sorry, the emergency fund, right? If you have an emergency fund first, for all those reasons, to give you that flexibility, give you that choice, to minimize the implications of losing a job, car blowing up, major life event, you get sick, something like that. By the way, again, if you get sick, that's what income protection insurance is for, so have a think about that. But yeah, those things help to make your financial life more bulletproof, means you can sleep better, gives you better financial options. I'm supposed to say, as a financial guy, maximize your returns, make the most money you can. I've already said it's more about life than about money, so I'm going to repeat that bit. But I'm also going to say, when I say maximize your returns, maximize your financial and emotional well-being, right? Those are different things to making the most money. If I'm taking stupid risks, maybe I get there, maybe I don't. If I don't get there, I lose all my money. If I do get there, I'm still stressed and pulling my hair out and having a horrible life, right? Be responsible and do the things that give you the best chance of the best life in total, including right now. Put aside as much money as you can afford without being silly. Put it in investments that you think are going to go well without taking stupid risks and losing sleep at night. Make sure you've got the optionality, if certain circumstances come to pass, to take advantage of those things. In a best case scenario, money outside super so you can retire at 55. In a worst case scenario, an emergency fund, life insurance, or income protection insurance in case something happens. Please be insured. Again, insurance is the absolute worst waste of money and stupidly expensive until the day you need it, in which case it is the cheapest thing in the world and the easiest investment in the world. So please have a think about that. Okay, I'm going to answer the questions in slightly different orders. I'm going to go with our anonymous questioners first. Wouldn't you change from growth to income as you near retirement? Depends how much you've got. 2 things. You can always sell some of your shares to provide income. So hypothetically, if I get 10% share price gain in growth or 5% in income, I could sell some of my shares to fund some of that income. And I have more income than if I just used income alone. Now, some combination probably makes sense. If you want to live on dividends, if you can use the franking credits, again, it's a mixed bag here. Would I go to income? Slightly. I suspect my investing will evolve as I get closer to retirement. I suspect I will invest in more income-producing shares rather than going for total growth. Will I be selling on my growth shares that I like, business I love? I own, here's one. I own shares in Berkshire Hathaway. I think I mentioned that already this week. It hasn't paid a dividend since 1965. The shares have still compounded at 20% a year. Now, if I'd have bought Woolies, those shares are flat over the last 5 years. They've paid a dividend of 3 or 4% a year. Berkshire Hathaway over that time has gone up by more than that. I don't know how much. Which one would I be better owning? Income feels better because I get the cash flow. I mentioned everlasting income already. Some of my members want to do that. And that's a great strategy. If it works for you, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to worry about share prices. I just want money to flow into my bank account every month or every half year or whatever it is. Yes, I just want income. I don't really mind if I don't maximize my capital gains. We talked about what's best for you, not what's best financially. I'm not maximizing my share price upside, but I'm getting reliable cash from dividends. Brilliant idea. Go for it. Knock yourselves out. Absolutely. Even then, I would say income producing shares rather than income from bonds or cash, because that's going to be lower. So I would, by the way, you don't get franking credits from cash or bonds. So I personally would still go shares, but income shares rather than growth shares. Berkshire, I hope never to sell. At some point I will, or my kids will. Hopefully I get the shares. Or I will sell actually to generate income, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to sell them to swap them out for dividend paying shares. I'm more likely to hold those and sell a portion off the top every year to fund my income needs. For example, that's not all I own, by the way. Of course, I own a whole lot of stuff, but that's an example of one that doesn't pay a single dividend. Others, Soul Patts I own. Washington H. Soul Pattinson. They pay a modest dividend, 2.9-ish, 2.7% share, something like that, of a dividend, sorry. But the dividend's been growing really nicely. So it's lower dividends, but better growth, better cash flow over the long term. So make your choice, whatever's right for you. But really good question. Peter, my super is all in cash. They're saying there's a big crash coming. Thoughts? I don't know, Peter. I'm not going to tell you whether there's a big crash coming or not. I don't know. Nobody knows, and that's the key point. Those people who are saying there's a crash coming have no idea. So what are they doing? They're lying to you, or they're lying to themselves, or both. Is there a chance of a crash? Yes, there always is. Was there a chance of a crash on the 20th of February 2020? Yes. And the market fell 38%. And then it recovered, and as of 2 weeks ago, hit an all-time high. So if you want to try and time the market, buy out when I say the crash coming. After the crash, you buy back in. In hindsight, I know exactly when I would buy and when I would sell. I would sell at the top of before the COVID crash and buy at 38% cheaper. I would have sold in 2007 and bought back in 2009 after the GFC had finished. I would have bought in 1980, sold in 1987 and bought back in 1998 when the stock market crash had happened. If I could tell these things in advance, I would do them. A great line from the finance writer and former Phil Morgan Housel: more money is lost in anticipating crashes than in the crashes themselves. Why is that? Because the market goes up over time. And so the longer you're out of the market, statistically, the more money you are foregoing, not losing in the absolute sense, but more profit you're foregoing by holding it out. If you are right, then you're going to say, see, Phillips, I told you, you're an idiot. I sold, I was in cash, I took advantage of the crash, I did really, really well. Maybe that's right. Over time, the market has gone up phenomenally. I've mentioned so many times that I didn't have the Vanguard chart ready, but 10 grand, 130 grand, $120,000 gain in 30 years, right? That's including the GFC. It's not anymore including the 90s recession because I'm old. It includes the GFC. It includes the Bali bombings. It includes the COVID crash. And yet the market gained 13 times in value despite all of those things. Now, maybe you might have timed the market perfectly, got in and out at exactly the right times. But if you'd missed some of that up leg, firstly, would you have said, well, I've missed that, but I'm going to wait for the next crash now, and then missed that next one and the next one? Or would you have got back in and said, okay, well, I guess I'll do it? I don't know, and you don't know. I don't mean this critically. I'm not talking to you personally. I don't know what you know or what you don't know. I know I don't know the future. I have never, ever, ever, ever gone to cash waiting for a crash. I don't try and time the market. I dollar cost average. We talked about that yesterday. I'm here for the long haul. Over time, if my 10 grand becomes 130, whether I lose a couple of times in the meantime, whether there's crashes and ups and downs, I mean, it sucks. I hate it. But I've made much more money staying invested than trying to time the market. You need to do you. If you want to be in cash because you don't want to sleep at night or you want to try and time the market, that's cool. Knock yourself out. Do what you need to do for you. I'm not doing it. I'm not investing. I'm not advising our members to do it. I think being invested, remaining invested, even despite the occasional drawdown, is far, far more profitable than trying to time the market. So that's what I do personally. That's what I would recommend to our members and our viewers. But again, I can't give you personal advice, Peter. And if it's more appropriate for you for your own reasons to hold cash, then go for it. You need to do what's right for you. I can't tell you what's good for you. Yes, Jess says time in the market is better than timing the market. That's absolutely true, Jess. That's 100% my approach. And I think the data shares it out, or bears it out. Sorry, I don't have time to pull up the chart. Someone remind me to do it tomorrow. I'll try and make sure I bring seriously, Google Vanguard Index chart. You'll see it. I've written a million articles about it. Google Happy Vanguard Index Chart Day. So I titled one of my articles a couple of years ago. If you Google Vanguard Index Chart Scott Phillips, I'm sure you'll get tweets or articles about it. You'll see the chart there. It is the I say a picture paints 1,000 words. In this case, a picture paints $120,000 because that's the gain it demonstrates. By the way, the US market did even better than that, so I'm gilding the lily, not at all. I could use the US data and say, hey, it's even better than this, or I could have used some sort of average. The reality is the market tends to create money over time, over the long term. I would absolutely stay in the market. Dollar cost average, buy more when shares are cheap, buy fewer when the shares are expensive. Keep adding, keep adding, keep adding. I don't know any long-term investor who's regretted doing it. So yes, I wouldn't be in cash. I would say I am. I mean, I can only tell you what I'm doing myself, which is I sell really rarely. When I do, I buy something else. I hate having cash on the sidelines because I believe the market goes up over time. We've hit our time. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this live stream. Superannuation is great. Please take advantage of the tax benefits. Please let compounding do its job. Please save as early as you possibly can, both inside and outside super. The maths is just the maths. Compounding, once you get it, you can't unget it. And that is literally the ticket to investment success. So please stick with that. Thanks, Gordon. Thanks, Hal. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Daft Monkey. Appreciate you learning a lot. You asked a question earlier. I don't think I got back to it, did I? Compounding Emergency Long-Term Savings Fund. Please ask me again tomorrow, Daft Monkey. I'll try and make sure I get it. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Phil, for joining us. Come back tomorrow. You've made it this far. If you haven't watched the other videos yet, do it in preparation. Tomorrow is our masterclass and Q&A. It's the last time you'll have to sit in front of me for an hour, and that's better for you than for me. But either way, let's finish the week with a bang. I will see you at 12:30 Eastern time tomorrow for the last in our series on Motley Fool's Financial Literacy Week. Until we speak then, have a great afternoon, a great morning tomorrow, and full on.